Hello, welcome to the student walkthrough video for GCSE History Paper 2, the British Depth Study. Here we are focusing on the British Depth Study as a whole, what this paper looks like and how you can do well. We have other videos available for this paper which go into more depth for the individual questions. My name is Sam and I am a subject specialist for Pearson Edexcel. You will also hear from Katie later in this video, who is Deputy Lead for History and a Senior Consultant at Harris Federation. In this session, we are going to look at what Paper 2, the British Depth Study, looks like. We are also going to consider how you can do well on this paper. So for Paper 2, you will have an hour and 50 minutes. This means that if you have extra time, you will have 2 hours and 17 and a half, just under 18 minutes. Paper 2 comes in 2 booklets, and together they are worth 64 marks. So you will have your period study booklet, and you will have your British Depth Study booklet. The British Depth Study focuses on a short time period, and it requires you to understand the complexity of a society or historical situation in British history. Here you can see what your workspace will look like in your Paper 2 exam. You will receive 3 different pieces of paper in your workspace. That will include the cover sheet, the British Depth booklet and the period study booklet. As I've said, Paper 2 consists of 2 separate question and answer booklets. Booklet P is a period study and Booklet B is a British Depth study. It will be your choice where you begin, but I suggest that you discuss this with your teacher first. And then it is up to you to manage your time effectively across the 2 papers. Here we have the 4 options available for Paper 2, the British Depth Study. The British Depth Study covers a topic from medieval or early modern British history. So you will either be studying Anglo-Saxon and Norman England, the reigns of King Richard I and King John, Henry VIII and his ministers, or early Elizabethan England. A depth study is a chance to look at a short period of British history in detail. It is not just about what happened, but also exploring patterns of the past, for example, social, economic, political, and religious aspects, and how they interacted. Each British depth study is divided into 3 key topics. You can be asked questions within one or spanning across one or multiple. So these are useful dates for you to know. Find your British Depth Study option here and learn these key dates that divide the key topics. Overall, they provide a framework for understanding the topic, but you must also consider how the different key topics link in a narrative. You will notice that there is some chronological overlap between topics. This structure helps highlight the complexity and interplay of different aspects within society. With the exception of the Anglo-Saxon and Norman England option, one of the key topics acts as an overview, drawing on themes and different aspects of society throughout the whole period. On the British Depth Study paper, there are short, medium and extended response questions. On the 12 and 16 mark question, stimulus points are provided. You may have already come across these questions in other exam papers, as they feature on both Paper 1 and Paper 3, so they should be a familiar question format. This paper has no sources and no interpretations. Spend some time watching our videos for the individual questions when you revise for this paper.
How can you do well on this paper? Well, you need to know your stuff. Both question 2 and question 3 or 4. The only way to access the top marks requires 3 aspects of content to be used. Then how that knowledge is developed to provide sufficient, relevant and accurate evidence to support the explanation being made will determine the level that you are awarded. Ensure that you revise content from all areas of the specification. The specification can be found on Pearson's website. And you need to demonstrate a depth of knowledge in your answers by including specific evidence where possible. This could be names, dates, statistics, or events. And you can use this specification in lots of different ways in your revision, as a checklist, making flashcards, or even mind maps and timelines. Some examples here might be to write the questions on one side and the answers on the other. You can make posters and mind maps and use other people to help you revise and test your knowledge. You can also write profiles on the key people named on the specification. Use images to help you remember things that they were involved in. For example, the importance of knowing the difference between the Anglo-Saxons and the Normans, or who was Richard and who was John, or Wolsey and Cromwell, are really important differences to understand. There are over 25 knowledge booster quizzes available on Pearson's website for the Anglo-Saxon unit and for the early Elizabethan England unit. You'll need to ask your teacher for access, but these can be a great resource for you to practice and check what you know already and maybe where you need to focus your revision. This is not a test of historical dates, but you do need to have sound chronological understanding. For example, take these 4 different events. Can you put them into the correct chronological order? Do you know which one comes first? This is how they work together, and this is where they feature within the different key topics. It's important that you are familiar and comfortable with the key terminology of your topic. Take care to learn the topic-specific vocabulary and practice using it. We'll look at this example question from the 2019 paper to see why it matters. See the key terminology highlighted in the question and the stimulus points. Consider how comfortable you are with the language and its meaning. What is the papacy? Who's a Catholic? And what does excommunication mean? Understanding these key terms is important not only to be able to access the question, but also for you in your answers. And it was even highlighted in the examiner's feedback that misunderstanding of this terminology hindered some candidates' performances. And here's another past exam question example from the Anglo-Saxon and Norman England unit. The words succession and the Witan are both used in the question and the stimulus points. And this reinforces the importance of understanding the vocabulary to access the question. Usefully, Pearson have provided us with a list of suggested keywords which can be found on their website. Another way to help you prepare and do well on the exam is to practice. Beyond writing lots of different exam questions, there's also real value in just practicing planning for the extended writing. High-performing answers have often made a good plan beforehand. Thinking about the 3 aspects of content you'll include in your answer, or what your judgment is, and what criteria you are using to make that judgment. Having all of that clear before you begin writing will really aid the clarity and clearness of your response. You can create plans for the same exam question 2 or 3 times. You can change the dates around, as shown in this question, to see what different knowledge you would need to include in that exam answer. You could also change the focus of the question, so here changing it from the revolt of the Northern Earls was the most significant challenge to Mary Queen of Scots was the most significant, or the Spanish Armada. Revising with other people, especially students in your class, is always useful, and asking for feedback from your teacher. There's a revision top tip guide available on Pearson's website along with past papers, mark schemes and examiner reports for you to read. That brings us to the end of this walkthrough video. Remember, we have videos for every question on each paper available. More information for students can be found on our website under Student Support. Good luck in the upcoming exams.